here's Brody Brazil.
Let's talk about what's next for the Oakland A's as they approach free agency of the winter 2020, setting them up for the 2021 MLB season. Now, what I don't intend to do here is try and figure out what the A's pipeline of prospects and younger players even looks like. That is because you understand there are some internal candidates to fill roles of free agent players that the A's don't retain. But the problem here is twofold. Number one, I'm not a professional scout, clearly. I can barely keep tabs on their current 40-man roster of big league players. But also this, most importantly, there was no minor league season of 2020. So I have nothing to base these younger players on, whether it's stats, development, how they've gotten better, how some may have even had setbacks. Only the organizations know this, so I don't want to try and second guess any of that, although I would say this is not a problem unique to the Oakland A's. A lot of clubs are going to deal with the unknowns of their pipelines entering 2021. What I do intend to do here is have a pretty thorough look at the A's players from 2020 who are about to become free agents, also some of those facing arbitration. And this is a unique season, especially because there's a lot of bullpen arms to talk about here. There's not a single player that I'm going to tell you is an automatic pass. Like, don't even worry about them if they go to free agency. I promise you, I'm not saying that as Mr. Nice Guy. I'm not saying that as a homer. I realistically would be quite satisfied if they were able to retain everybody. I mean, I could make a case for pretty much everybody to come back. But therein lies a huge problem. That is so unrealistic. It never happens that way in sports. So, again, I'm going to try and showcase how this looks and what the A's are up against in some of their decision-making looking ahead towards 2021. So let's talk about arbitration-eligible players here first. Now, there are 4 of them, and to me, they are all critical in nature. Mark Canha, Sean Manaea, Chris Bassett, and Chad Pinder. The way arbitration works and the way it's set up, you would hope that the A's would have no problem retaining all 4 of those individuals for 2021. I'll be honest, I think it would be very unfortunate if they weren't able to keep that foursome together, at least the way it's laid out contractually. So let's bring it now to the free agent aspects. Mike Minor, Joakim Soria, Yusmeiro Petit, Mike Fiers, Marcus Semien, that's a huge one, Jake Lamb, Liam Hendriks, that's also another gigantic one, Robbie Grossman, Tommy Lestella, and TJ Mcfarland. Okay, so there's a lot of important names right there that are set to become free agents for the Oakland A's. Mike Minor, the A's traded for him late. I think he was spectacular, left-handed veteran arm, but he made $9.83 million in 2020, or at least that's the way it was supposed to pay out and play out. I don't know if that's an option that they would want to retain at that price. I don't know how that fits their starting pitching rotation. I love what he did for the team. I love the fact that he was even able to be used out of the bullpen in the playoffs. I don't know how that would work, and I think that they acquired Mike Minor specifically for the stretch. I don't know what their aspirations are there. Joakim Soria and Yusmeiro Petit. I don't want to combine these guys because their names are back-to-back here on the list, but I do think that they are equally valuable in what they've provided with the team in relief pitching appearances. Petit more often in relief of the starter. Petit more often the eighth inning guy, the setup guy for your closer. I just think that, again, being realistic here versus being optimistic, optimistic is you could keep both. Realistically, you may only be able to keep one. And Soria in 2020 was at $8.5 million. Petit was at $5.5 million. I'm just here to say that if the A's could hang on to one of those guys, I think that would be realistic, and that would be nice. Mike Fiers. This is an important one. Has pitched quite well for the staff and didn't really get the playoff opportunities that we would have expected or some had even hoped for in 2020. But in the regular season, I want to say the team won 8 of his 11 starts. The record may not have shown that for him. The stats don't necessarily always pan out like it was his best season, but the A's win when Mike Fiers starts. That, to me, is the stat that tells all above anything else. The A's were fortunate to get him to sign a 2-year deal. I know he likes his teammates. I know he likes Oakland. I know he likes the situation of how their team is structured and that they're going to win for at least a couple more years. They're set up to do that. I would hope they could find a way. He was on an $8.1 million deal in 2020. It would be great if the A's could bring back Mike Fiers. Marcus Semien. This one is critical. You know what? And I'm going to put Marcus Semien here, actually, with one of the other names that's close to him here on this list. But I'm going to put Marcus Semien in a similar yet different yet similar conversation with Liam Hendriks. Let's talk about the similarities first. You have players that are in critical spots for you. Marcus as your leadoff hitter and your shortstop and one of the biggest team leaders. I mean, that's a hard trio of things to replace right there. All that he provides you. Okay? And then there's also Liam Hendriks, who is your team's closer. And I don't care what you say, you cannot just throw anybody into that role. So I think from the thought of who else can you replace them with, is there even an option? Is there somebody who is Major League Baseball shortstop ready of the caliber of Marcus, of the closing capabilities of Liam Hendriks? If you think there's somebody out there that the A's are already in control of, I'd love to hear it. I don't know that that's the case. The differences may be this. Well, actually, maybe this is a similarity. I thought the difference would be that when Marcus came to the A's, there was a struggle defensively. He worked on that over all the years of 2015 to 16 to 17, 18, and then in 2019, he's an American League Most Valuable Player candidate. And playing a Gold Glove caliber of defense at shortstop. Not easy to do. Not easy to improve and make the strides that Marcus did. But I thought this was a difference. I actually think it's a similarity. Liam Hendriks was DFA'd by the Oakland A's in 2018. And when he cleared waivers, he stayed with the team. By the end of that year, he pitched in the playoff game. They selected him as the opener. I know that didn't go as planned, but in 2019, he was an all-star. And in 2020, one of the best closers in baseball. The stats will prove it. And the eye test, more importantly, the eye test will prove it. So both these players navigating journeys of adversity. I guess that's probably the thing that I thought might be different, but as I think about it, it's a commonality. These guys gave it their all. These guys showed you some character as a part of the Oakland A's, and I think that has to be rewarded. So, two things here. Their importance on the field, their character off it. I know it's going to be difficult. I'm not the one signing the checks here. I would just say that if the A's are not able to retain both Liam and Marcus, or either one of them, if they can't hang on to either one of them, I think there's going to be some heartbreak. Be honest with you. I think there's going to be some heartbreak. Jake Lamb, I'll move on to him. That's another player that the A's acquired right before the trade deadline. No, actually, I think it was it after that? He was picked up because Arizona designated him for assignment. And again, this is kind of in the similar conversation as Mike Minor. I don't want to say it wouldn't work out for him and the team, but the A's have Matt Chapman. He'll be healthy in 2021. It might be a little repetitious. I love how Lamb got to showcase the chip on his shoulder and how he was playing angry as soon as he joined the A's. The guy was a hitting machine. Got more hits with the A's in a fraction of the time than he did all season with the Diamondbacks. Again, I don't know the likelihood of him staying, but I'm happy for the time that he had with Oakland and what he did with the Oakland A's. Move on to just a couple more names here, and they are all important. Robbie Grossman was on a $3.7 million deal in 2020. He signed a one-year deal for 2020 I would be so hopeful that the A's could retain him. I see Robbie as your everyday left fielder, guy who primarily hitting from the left side. Just, again, this is a stats versus eye test difference. Didn't have the greatest statistical year of 2020. And I also want to throw in the whole caveat that we're grading on a curve of 2020 anyway, because it was a bonkers year and what can really be relied on in a 60-game season where everything was pretty much different. But if you watch the games, Grossman always was clutch. Grossman would always find a way to either make productive outs or get on base, even if he didn't get a hit. Grossman is one of the most solid outfielders the A's have ever had. Did he even make an error again this year? Was the last error he made as a member of the Minnesota Twins? I think it was. So Robbie Grossman, for me, again, I know I said at the beginning of this that pretty much every player I could make a case to keep. But Robbie, to me, is high on that list of names and players you would want to and you would need to retain. And I realize the A's they have a wealth of outfielders. They have a wealth of players like Robbie. But I think you also realize that if you're going to go back to a 162-game season next year, you're going to need every player you can get. You're going to need the depth that you can get. It's a battle of attrition. And to have a guy like Robbie Grossman in there who's your everyday guy, that checks one of the boxes for me of things you need. Tommy Lestella. Now, I know I said before that Mike Minor and Jake Lamb were in that different category because they were traded for, they were acquired, midstream, mid-season. But there's something that's just different about Tommy Lestella. Watching him play 10 games against the A's as a member of the Angels and seeing how, I say this with all respect, how annoying he was against the A's, how good he was against Oakland. And then when Oakland got him and he just did more of the same. Really solid defensive second base, could play a little third for you, was probably realistically your two-hitter. A lot of the time, I could see him batting in a lot of different places, but I like him at the top of the order just because he gets on base or does something productive with the bat, rarely ever strikes out. And according to Bob Melvin, really got comfortable in that A's clubhouse. In a short time, in a weird season, he liked the team seems to like him. In terms of, I talked about Marcus and Liam being the big names and what the heart is really set on bringing them back and re-signing them. I got to say, Tommy Lestella, as a person we don't have that background with, for me would fall easily into that same category of importance. To a similar extent of what I just said about Robbie Grossman. I just think that there's somebody right there who can do the job for you, who can play that second base that you need, who can get on base like your team really needs at times. Why go shop around for anything else instead of trying to make a reasonable deal to retain Tommy Lestella? And then last but not least, TJ Mcfarland, another name out of the bullpen. He made $1.8 million in 2020, but I just feel like there were a lot of arms in that bullpen that just did not get enough credit in 2020. And Mcfarland was one of them. Didn't see him maybe as often as some of the others, but this was an A's bullpen that was so reliable. I think Mcfarland at 31 years, he'll be 32 next season. I think it's the right thing to do, if you can afford it, to keep him and as much of that bullpen intact as you can entering 2021. So there you go. I ran through some of the names, and that's the way it shakes out. This is an important piece. This is an important time frame for the A's this offseason because I really feel like they're at the opposite of you hear about a window in sports, a team trying to keep it together as long as they can and strike while they can because players are getting older, players are deteriorating, players are going to lose out on their timing chance. The A's are at the opposite spectrum of that. They need to keep it together because so many of these guys, so many of the young players, especially all those arbitration players, Canna, Minaya, Bassett, and Pinder, as well as a Sean Murphy, as well as a Ramon Laureano, those are all players that are ascending together. And you want to keep this group together as much as you can because you want them to ascend and ultimately be at that pinnacle that you think that they're all capable together of as a group. So again, hard to know what else is out there. I know all these names will not be back. That's unfortunate. But just to summarize, Marcus is up there. Liam is up there. Robbie Grossman is up there. Lestella is up there. And if you could just keep some of your bullpen arms, a Petit or a Soria or a Mcfarland, and forgot Mike Fiers. Man, there's a lot of work for the A's to get to here. So I'm interested to see how it shakes out. But this is important stuff. Usually, off seasons, you understand there's change. The more stability this team can keep, I really think the better off they'll be.